do with our reports. As I've said, with our reports we generate this sort of intelligence that I've just spoken about. The intelligence that enables us to focus our resources on high impact campaigns that include campaigns not only for exposing corruption, but for changing policy in a manner that makes the society less vulnerable to corruption. In addition, we also investigate a select number of individual acts of corruption, and we hand over the fruits of our investigations to the relevant authorities, but we also work, usually more fruitfully, with a full range of media platforms to ensure that perpetrators are named and shamed, and the public is made aware that there are consequences for engaging in corruption. We select, obviously, only a very few of the thousands of reports that we have received, and so we attempt to select high-impact cases to investigate. And I keep on stressing the term high impact, because the real point of these campaigns and investigations is to demonstrate to the public that there is point in talking out, in reporting, in the hope that more will talk out, because it is actually the volume of noise generated by this talking that will make the authorities sit up and listen. We're under no illusion that we can contribute to like naming and shaming or arresting a tiny fraction of the number of people who are engaged in corruption. In fact, the police and the public protector only impact on a very small number of people. And so what we're really trying to do by doing the investigations that we do is by mounting the campaigns that we mount, is to encourage more people to talk out. And I think that this approach is working. I think there's a discernible change in the environment surrounding corruption. One needs to look at the measures that I've already referred to, contemplated by Lindiwe Sisulu, the Minister of Public Service and Administration. We need to look at the positions taken by, amongst others, Trevor Manuel, Pravin Gordon, Aaron Motsoaledi, by institutions like the Auditor General's Office, the Public Protector, the Treasury. The reason why these and other senior elected representatives and senior officials and institutions are acting with a definite sense of urgency is because I think they perceive the public's outrage and they recognize the impact that corruption is having on the quality of public life and on their own standing and electability. I think they've literally got the message. And while I don't for one moment want to overclaim our own role in this, I'm confident that we've had an impact, and I'm confident that our impact is directly attributable to the fact that we speak with the authority of those who have reported to us. We're not just 25 outraged people working in an office. We try and do whatever we do with the backing and with the legitimacy that these reports give to us and give to our voice. So if we are listened to and we have 4,000 reports, can you imagine what our impact will be with 40,000 reports or 400,000 reports? If the education authorities in Gauteng, for example, are prepared to engage constructively with us because we are in possession of a few hundred reports of corruption in education, think how several thousand or tens of thousands of reports would strengthen their willingness and their resolve to work with us. And so the answer to the question, where are our teeth? I have to say that our teeth are in the mouth of the public. That's really what we're on about. And so then to the last question, are we a talk shop? I think maybe we are a talk shop, but don't knock talk shops. Because active citizens talking loudly and forthrightly is the mechanism of change in a democratic society, because it will force those in power to listen and take action or to account for their inaction. I'm aware that accountability is an overused and somewhat cliched term, but I've no doubt that it's the essential factor in resolving the wicked problem of corruption. So in summary then, our principal mechanism is to encourage the public to report experiences of corruption. Our role is to amplify and focus that voice. We will confront those with the power and resources to drive change on the basis of the public response that we receive. and we will report the responses of those in the public sector and with public power back to the public. In short, we'll attempt to hold those in power accountable to those who have elected them and those who are custodians of the resources that belong to the public. And I think that there is literally no other way of confronting this sort of problem, confronting a problem as deep and as complex and as systemic as this one. I want to end by just showing you some of the data, particularly data comparing it with the Eastern Cape. And so, over the period of our 16 months, we've received something. This is, I think, to the end of March. We've probably received by now something over 4,000 complaints. A certain proportion of those, the information contained in them is too vague to be useful. 44% of the complaints we receive are not about corruption, which is kind of interesting because corruption has become a bit of a metaphor in society for anything that is unfair. Anytime somebody is treated unfairly, they believe that corruption is at the root of it. And about 42% of those reports are about what we would call an abuse of public power and public resources. What is gratifying is that whereas in the early stages of what we did, about 70% of the reports we received were not about corruption. Now about 70% of the reports that we receive are about corruption. So we've had some success in persuading the public to accept our definition of corruption, a definition which has also changed in response to public perceptions of corruption. These are the corruption reports received by province. This is not a particularly scientific deduction. I think if this were properly weighted by size of by population and by gross geographic product, you would see that the Northwest would loom somewhat larger than it does, or the Northern Cape would loom considerably larger than it does, and Gauteng would somewhat decrease. I think that our profile is also higher in Gauteng. But it gives you some idea. I think the Eastern Cape and KZN, for example, are probably fairly correctly weighted there. As to the geographic context, you'll see that 43% of the reports that we've received relate to corruption of small town municipal finances. 80% of the reports that we've received from the Eastern Cape relate to small town municipal finances. Of the reports that we have received, 7.7% come from the provincial capital. In the Eastern Cape, 9.1% are directed at the provincial capital. Of the reports that we have received, 49% come from metropolitan areas. In the Eastern Cape, only 10% are from metropolitan centres. As to the type of corruption we've received, there again, I think there's some interesting rough data here. Threats against whistleblowers, 2.3% across the country, 1.4% across the country, 2.3% in the Eastern Cape. Ghost workers, 1.9% across the country, 4.6% in the Eastern Cape, which reflects very accurately a report done by the SIU on healthcare in the Eastern Cape. Bribery, 22.7% nationally, only 9.2% in the Eastern Cape. Although when you look further down at procurement